So as I said, today's topic is how to avoid your retail business from losing customer credit card data to hackers. And we'll be covering three key areas in today's presentation. One is the facts and reality about data breaches, risk mitigations for a more secure, how to secure your business and protect your customer data. And the last section will be to register to take action to actually mitigate your risk and protect your business. So have you thought, in this next slide, what we're going to discuss is, have you actually thought what is the most valuable data for cyber criminals? And in today's slide, and from all the research we have done, the most valuable data or customer data for cyber criminals is credit card data. And no matter what type of business you are, if you are accepting credit card data, you would be vulnerable to a data breach from a cyber criminal, which essentially means you may be a business accepting payments online, or you may be a business actually accepting payments across the counter, meaning you actually have a credit card terminal where someone can actually come swipe a credit card and make a payment. Or you may be accepting payments via mail order or telephone order, which essentially means that your customers can fill up a form and enter their credit card details in the form and fax it to you or email the form to you for you to process the payment. And the last way is, they can actually call your call center or your organization to actually make a payment over the phone. So these are the various means by which, and today we see more of mobile payments also happening, which is again another form of across-the-counter payment. So I have a mobile phone with a payment application in that, and then I can come to your store and make those payments using NFC technologies and so on and so forth. So it doesn't matter what type of business you are, if you are accepting credit card payments and you're either storing, processing, or transmitting, there is a high chance that you are vulnerable to a data breach. So the next slide, we will see what actually causes these data breaches and what is the reason behind these data breaches. So you need to really think here, and you'll be really surprised when I take you to the next slide to actually identify what are the main causes for a data breach. So this slide, where you see the global causes for a data breach, is almost 45 to 50% of global data breaches are caused due to negligence. And but negligence by someone internally in the business or your service provider or a third party who's actually managing your systems. The remaining breaches are system glitches or external attacks. So these figures should really begin to get us thinking and also alarm us to some extent, saying if negligence is the root cause, then how are we going to deal with this? So as we look further into the data breach stories, this slide covers what countries are targeted by cyber criminals for data breaches. So the countries marked in red are the countries which are most targeted, and you'll see from this map, USA, some parts of Europe, Asia, such as countries like China, India, Australia, Japan are the most targeted countries globally from a data breach standpoint. And what we have done is, in the next few slides, what I'll be covering now is actually summarizing all the findings of data breaches and data breach reports, what we have researched and reviewed internally here at Stickman, so that you don't have to sit through slides of statistics and data. So we've actually summarized it in 2 slides. So this slide, one of the key things what we can learn from all the reports is most of the data breaches have been purely opportunistic, meaning it is as simple as I forgot my keys in my car, and the thief saw an opportunity to actually steal my car, and that was a negligence on my part, and there was an opportunity created for a thief to actually conduct the crime. The other is the thief or the cyber criminals haven't had to be really smart. They could actually conduct the breach because of these negligent activities in a very simple and easy manner, meaning most of the breach investigation reports state that the breaches caused were not sophisticated at all. They were rather very simple, and the simplicity is explained in this diagram here as in the negligence caused by a user who left his keys in the car. And the other finding is that most of the data which was actually stolen were from servers in data centers. Or servers, not just data centers, servers could be even in your own office location. So these are servers holding huge amounts of data, and that is also alarming to know that, if the entry and exit points into these large data centers or servers is so easy and there can be negligent activities happening here, we are directly creating an opportunity for cyber criminals to attack into these servers and copy the data and move on. So there's something to be clearly aware of from the findings of these data breaches. The other very interesting finding is the victim was informed about the data breach by a third party. So in most of the cases, the victim didn't even know that he had a data breach. It was after a few days and sometimes few months later, someone actually found that there was a data breach, and that's how the victim actually found out. And in most cases, it would be the third party who informs the victim saying, yeah, you had a data breach. And all the investigation reports of all the data breaches conducted, for post-data breach investigations conducted, none of those customers are found to be PCI DSS compliant at the time of the breach, which also causes a lot of concern from an industry perspective. So what does all this mean in terms of consequences? So we've looked at, the causes of a data breach, we've looked at the summary, we've looked at which countries have been affected. So the next slide, we'll actually, look at some of the consequences. So really the consequences, your business, your brand, your reputation, the money you're going to lose, your customers being unhappy, impacted by the fact of a data breach, which essentially means they can't use their credit card anymore. They'll have to get their card replaced. If they have direct debits, they have to change their cardholder and card data with all their providers where they have direct debits. And then we always have the media, looking out for such news to, put it out there, and, which directly impacts your brand and your reputation. So really that's the consequence. So in the next slide, what we'll actually go through now is go a bit more deeper and understand what that consequence actually means in dollar terms. So the consequence to you, and we've done, and these are real industry stats, this is not figures which has just come out of the air, but as a business, all you'll have to lose is about 5,000 cards, right? Just about 5,000 credit card data, which will equate to about $1 to $2 million in post-breach expenses. That is the real consequence to you, realistically speaking. So how did we come up with this figure? So all the data breach reports also end up actually finding out what is the cost per account data lost for an organization. And on an average, it costs about $200 to $400 per account data lost. So 200 times 5,000 is about $1 million, and 400 times 5,000 is about $2 million. And if you see some media reports, and also which has been very recently released, is on an average, all the data breaches studied, on an average, each incident has actually cost $2.16 million per incident, and that has been proven across the board. So as an organization yourself, you may not end up spending $2 million yourself. You may be 1 or 1.5 or maybe less than 1, 2. But the point is, on an average across all the data breaches which have been studied across the globe, the average cost per breach has been reported to be about $2.16 million. So where are all these breaches happening? Who are the companies being actually affected? So the next slide, we just look at some recently affected companies with data breaches. So in the retail sector, we have companies like Lego, Billabong. We have large corporates like Telstra, Global Payments. PT was a very recent one. LinkedIn was all over the news. And Global Payments alone, the latest report states that it costed them about $85 million. This is their breach was reported in March this year. So it's March, April, May, June. So in 4 months' time, they've actually spent about $85 million reported post-breach expenses. LinkedIn is now claiming they have already spent $1 million in post-breach expenses. Well, unfortunately, we will not have the figures for every organization here in this presentation till all the reports have been out and the investigations are complete. But this is the fact. This is what is actually happening in reality. So while all this is happening, the media is absolutely active out there, and you will see all latest media reports in July, even August, continuous reports, and the media is always looking out for such kind of information to publish it, and then which directly impacts your reputation and brand. So if you want to keep up to date and know what's happening in the PCI industry or the world, you can follow this particular group, which is PCIWorld. It's funded by us at this point in time. We started this. There's no marketing material or anything over here. It's just latest news and information on the PCIWorld. So you can follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or actually if you have a question and you want to actually talk about your organization's issues, we also have a 1-800-PCI helpline, which is a free helpline, and this is an Australian number. So you have to add the country code +61, 1-800-PCI help, and you can actually call us and have a chat with us about PCI and how it is impacting your company. So now the next few slides, we're going to jump into the second section of this presentation, and that is looking at the risk mitigation strategies. How do I mitigate my risks when it comes to PCI, and what steps can I take to protect my customers' cardholder data? So I hope everyone is now clear on what data breaches are, what causes them, what are the consequences, what are the impacts, what are the financial impacts, and so on and so forth. If anyone has a question at this stage, feel free to ask me the question right now. I'll be happy to answer them. So let's move on to the next slide, which is risk mitigation. So about 7-8 years ago, all the major card brands, Visa, MasterCard, JCB, MX, Diners, came together and created something called as the Payment Card Industry Security Standards Council. And the council came up with this standard called PCI DSS, which is basically Payment Card Industry Data Security Standards Compliance. And the standard was purely created as a global standard, meaning it's the same standard across the globe, doesn't matter what size of organization you are or what type of organization you are. As long as you are either accepting or handling credit card data in any form or shape, you need to meet the standard and protect the customer data. So the role of the council is to actually create the standard, and the standard is broken up into 4 components. It's got 6 goals, 12 sub-requirements, 211 controls under the requirements, and 315 testing procedures in total. So at this top level, it may sound a bit complicated and intricate to actually even jump into or get into the standard. But what we'll do here is we'll actually look at the 6 goals and get a fair understanding of what it actually means to get into a journey of PCI. So the next few slides you'll see actually further description of each of these individual goals so that you have a bit more clarity of what it actually means. So goal number 1 is basically build and maintain a secure network. So assume that this is your cardholder data storage location, right? This is where you're storing your cardholder data. So the first goal is you build and maintain a secure network around the cardholder data storage location. So you may be storing cardholder data in multiple locations, and each of those locations need to have a secure network. So we've used this example of a castle, and just to make the story clear here and more simple, is let's assume you're storing the cardholder data here, and then you build a network around it, and you could have multiple such locations and so on and so forth. The second goal is, well, the data within that network, that secure network, also has to be secured, meaning you need to protect it in some form or shape. So industry examples of protecting the actual data would be encrypting the data or tokenizing the data or having, different levels of access to get into that data and so on and so forth. So you need to actually go in to that storage location and actually ensure that that storage is actually protected. The third goal is to maintain a vulnerability management program, which essentially means that on an ongoing basis, you need to ensure that you have people, systems, and processes to check whether your network and your storage location is vulnerable to any new kind of threats. Because you can't just build a network and expect it to remain secure for the rest of your life. So you need to constantly have a vulnerability management program around the area where you actually protect your data, and it has to be an ongoing management program. So it's a clear-cut program should be put in place to manage your cardholder data. The fourth goal is to implement strong access control measures, which essentially means people who have access into and outside the cardholder data network, so need to have strong access control measures, meaning you need to have unique usernames and passwords for each and every individual who would have access to gain in and out of the network. And if you identify someone who should not be given access, for example, we have the hackers waiting here to try and gain access into the cardholder network, he shouldn't be given the access. So that goal number 4 actually addresses access controls in and out of the network where cardholder data is actually stored. The next goal is to regularly monitor and test your network, which is basically one step beyond your vulnerability management program. So here what you're actually doing is you're trying to actually forcefully enter into your own network through a testing mechanism by breaking into the network in an ethical manner and actually prove whether the vulnerabilities you have identified in the past are true or false. So you have a program in place to regularly monitor and test your network, whether someone can break into it or not. And that is the goal, and that is goal number 4. And the last and final goal is basically maintain an information security policy and procedures. So you need to continuously maintain policies and procedures which will allow and gain access into and outside the network on a regular basis. So if you buy another company, you need to ensure that your policies and procedures are streamlined, because in the retail sector we see a lot of buyouts of different companies and so on and so forth. So you have to be absolutely sure that your policies and procedures are standardized across your different businesses, and especially in retail you have multiple store locations, warehouses, and so on and so forth, where people can gain access into your network from different locations. So it's very important to have strong policies and procedures and also trained and implemented across your organization. So with this we complete the explanation of the 6 goals within PCI. Now in the next slide what we'll actually look at is who are the people in this whole PCI landscape, what is involved and who actually gets impacted by PCI. So here in the center we have written the PCI Council. So that's the council which actually builds the standard or creates the PCI standard. Then the standard is taken by the card brands, Visa, Amex, JCB, Diners. They take the standard and then drop the standard down to the acquiring banks and the issuing banks. So the acquiring bank is a bank who actually acquires the merchant, and then there are service providers in between who actually service the merchant and the bank to conduct the payment transactions. And then the issuing bank is the bank which issues cards to individuals like you and me. So we are the card holders. So ultimately, in this entire landscape, the whole idea of this whole process is the standard has been created to protect us. And it's our data out there, right? And from your business standpoint, it is your customer's data, and this is your customer out here who is trusting your business and giving his personal information, including his credit card, to conduct business with you. And you as a merchant or a service provider are not protecting that cardholder data, you basically put your customer at risk. So the standard flows all through the life cycle to protect this one individual, which is us, the customer. So there's the next slide. We'll just go a little bit more elaborate on the service provider so that we are clear, because there's a lot of conversation in the marketplace saying who actually needs to be compliant in the whole life cycle of PCI. So when you look at service providers, the quick examples are call centers who work on behalf of businesses to actually accept card payments on behalf of your business. So if you have an online business and you don't want to actually have your own call center, you can outsource the call center to someone else to actually accept payments on behalf of the products you sell. You may have data storage entities like tape backup companies and physical storage of paper retention and so on and so forth. Your software vendors, your back office services, data center providers, third-party processors, hosting providers, issuers for processing. So all these people who actually touch cardholder data in some form or shape need to be compliant to the PCI compliance standard. And if your business is looking at maintaining compliance, you need to ensure that you have a clear list of all your service providers to ensure that, because if they are not compliant, you cannot demonstrate compliance yourself. And that is the trick here in this game too. So there's this, the next few slides will go through certain myths and certain challenges what you would face in a project. And we traditionally hear that, business say, oh, I've outsourced all my cardholder data, so, it's not my problem. But realistically, you are the merchant. You have the merchant account with the acquiring bank, and you need to maintain and demonstrate compliance. So the next few slides, what I'm going to actually do is share a few challenges and griefs. And this is purely out of my own experience running some few large projects in PCI over the last few years. And also, as a business, this is all what we do. We do PCI compliance in and out. So this is to share with you all the different stages and griefs what you would see in a PCI project. So one of the most common ones is denial. Okay, PCI doesn't have to do anything with us. That doesn't really apply to us. So we've seen organizations going through this process of denial, saying it doesn't really impact us, so we don't have to look into it. If you're accepting cardholder data or you're processing cardholder data as a service provider, you need to look at PCI now, because it is a mandatory standard. The other aspect is, anger, saying this is not fair, it's too complicated, too big, this data is not mine. Agree, yes, we all go through this process. I myself went through this process during one of my earlier projects. So the fact is to look into it before you react. The third one is bargaining, saying, okay, I'll do 50% or I'll encrypt the data and I should be fine. But unfortunately, PCI is not designed that way. There's nothing like 50% compliance or 90% compliance. It's either you're compliant or not compliant. So bargaining will not really work at the end of the day, unfortunately, from a pure security and compliance standpoint. And the last two sections are basically in this next slide. Is, we'll never get there, and we have seen many projects in PCI hanging for years together because there's no definitive goal. There's no real program in place. There's no real structure in place. And the last one being, oh, don't worry about it. We'll probably never get hacked, so we should be okay. But realistically, we have seen two types of organizations, one that have been hacked, one that are yet to be hacked. And that is a sad fact and the true reality what we have to face as businesses today going into the digital economy. The next slide, what I'm going to cover is a few more aspects post these griefs is myths. And the myths, the interesting ones are I don't store the cardholder data, so I don't need to be compliant. So this is an interesting one, right? May be true in certain instances, but if you are accepting cardholder data and you're processing or transferring the data, you need to look into compliance. You need to actually assess yourself and actually be absolutely sure what is in scope and out of scope of compliance. There's another myth that, oh, if I finish a self-assessment, then I should be compliant. Probably you will be, but you need to be absolutely sure. And how do you make sure is, you actually have to go through the 6 goals, 12 requirements, 211 controls, 315 testing procedures, even if you are self-assessing yourself as PCI. It's just like tax, right? We have our annual tax returns. Many years ago, I used to do my tax returns myself, but I don't dare to do that anymore right now because I use a professional to help me actually ascertain whether I'm doing the right thing from a return standpoint. And self-assessment is quite similar there. We can take the charge ourselves to do it. However, if you don't have professional support, you can be putting your business at risk. And the last 2 areas are, oh, we're too small, we don't accept too many cards, so hence we don't need to be compliant, which is also a myth and it is incorrect. It doesn't matter what size, what type of organization you are, the standard is common for the globe. It's a global standard and it's same for any size or type of organization. And the last myth is, okay, I've outsourced all my cardholder transactions, so then I don't need to be compliant. Well, it may be true in certain cases, but have you done an assessment? Have you verified with your acquiring bank? And so on and so forth are the questions you need to ask at this stage to actually be absolutely sure that you don't need to comply. So with this stage at this point in time, we've covered quite a lot of information, and the next few slides are going to be purely focused on how to simplify this journey. The fact is, PCI is not going to go away. It's going to remain. Data security is key. It doesn't matter if it's cardholder data security or data security in general. But the point is, the biggest challenge we have seen with organizations is how to simplify this process, how to have a clear-cut process. So the next few slides will actually go through a methodology, a program, what you can put in place to actually protect and have a clear-cut program to manage and track and report on your compliance. So this journey, and it's built here internally at Stickman, which we work with all our clients, is broken up into 4 phases. So phase 1 is your assessment phase, phase 2 is remediation, phase 3 is certify, and phase 4 is maintain. And here in the center we put this 12-month cycle. So basically what we say is your program, your PCI DSS journey has to be a journey, not a destination, and it has to be a 12-month annual program, which essentially means at the end of every 12 months you need to assess, and if need be remediate, certify, and maintain, and go back to assess at the end of 12 months every year, and it's going to be an ongoing cycle. So we'll jump into each of these phases in a bit more detail. So let's look at assess to start with. So in your assessment phase, you're basically scanning for different kinds of things. So one, you can run a scan to actually ascertain if you're storing cardholder data within your network, and to be absolutely sure that you're not storing any data, because if you're storing data, you need to protect it, and that is goal number 2, if you remember. You also need to scan for more vulnerabilities of your network, and while you do all these scans, you also begin to ascertain your cardholder data network. So you actually create a network saying, okay, I have payments coming from online, from fax, from email, from telephone orders, mail orders, and so on and so forth, and then this data is flowing through my business in different areas, and this is the cardholder data network. So once you have the network in place, then you actually conduct an assessment of PCI against that network. Once you conduct the assessment, then you come up with your gaps. So you actually know against the PCI DSS assessment standard and your data network, the gaps are A, B, and C, or how many of our gaps come out. And then you have to build a remediation plan around the gaps. And then from phase 1, you actually move to phase 2, which is remediate. Some of the key elements you need to remember and take away from this webinar for remediation is removing the cardholder data from areas which doesn't need to store or even process or transmit cardholder data. We've seen in many organizations data is lying across legacy systems, desktops, laptops, old servers, backup files, and so on and so forth. And the first step is to literally remove this data from everywhere where it is not necessary to be stored. A good analogy here is, would you store cash in every single pocket, in every single room within your home or your business or your retail business for that matter? Cash is always kept securely in a designated location in most instances. Yeah, there are people who may not store it carefully, but I'm saying in general, the tendency for cash is to protect it. So similarly, customer data has to be protected and not stored everywhere. So remove it from places where it's not required. And by removing, you actually reduce your scope of PCI compliance. So the areas where you're not storing cardholder data or customer data, you take them out of scope of PCI or any other compliance standard. And then you conduct an evaluation of all the remediation solutions you need to put in place. You implement the remediation solution, you rerun your scans, your vulnerability scans, your cardholder data scans, and then you complete your remediation program. And once you complete your remediation program, you move into the next phase, which is your reporting and certification. So you conduct another review, do a reassessment, certify and report on PCI compliance. So literally, if you see this journey, the word compliance is literally the last aspect. It is basically writing a report saying, yeah, I have done all these things. So it's like a checklist. So realistically, organizations need to focus on the previous two slides, which is assess and remediate, to arrive at the third phase, certify. And you may, as an organization, may not reach the final stage of certification or even reporting, and you may continue remediation and maintenance, which is the next phase, which I'll go through in a little more detail. Because while you're remediating some aspects of PCI, doesn't mean you don't need to maintain compliance in the other areas where you're already compliant. Because after you do an assessment, you would mostly find that you may not be compliant only in a certain areas against the standard. It's very highly unlikely you're not compliant against all the standards, unless you're a brand new business and you're starting off day one, which is a completely different kettle of fish. But then if you're an existing business and you look at the standard is not alien. It's basic things. We've seen the 6 goals. And based on the 6 goals, you'll find that you are compliant to many of the standards, but some of the standards you are not. And then you need to have a remediation program for that. But at the same time, you also need to have a maintenance program to maintain compliance against all the other standards, which you are already compliant. And that involves monitoring your logs, monitoring your file integrity, running your vulnerability scans, and there is a requirement to run these vulnerability scans every quarter, running an annual penetration testing, checking your routers and firewall rules and policies, and then conducting your annual assessment, which is the next phase, which is the 12-month cycle. So at the end of the maintenance phase, you move to the next phase, which is basically your annual assessment. So irrespective of what size, type, if you have this simple program in place, phase 1 assess, phase 2 remediate, phase 3 certify, maintain over a 12-month period, you will achieve and maintain compliance in a more effective manner than many other organizations who actually struggle through this process. I hope this is clear at this point in time. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take those questions now. Apologies. The next slide I'm going to address saying, okay, given we've done all this, what if we get breached? So you can have the best security systems in the world, but then, hey, there is always a possibility that you could get breached, and the breach could be a resultant of some negligence or something else. But the point here to actually remember is, don't panic if you have a breach. That's the most important thing. The first thing you would do is, like if you had a thief steal your car or, enter the home and conduct a theft, the first thing you would do is inform the authorities. And that's exactly what you do in a data breach too. The moment you find out, you need to inform. You don't have to inform the media unless and until it's absolutely necessary and it's impacted millions of customers. Then you may want to do a media release. But the first thing is to inform the authorities and immediately conduct an investigation to be absolutely sure what actually happened and what caused the breach. And then you go into your communication stage and then ascertain if it's a small number of customers, there is no mandatory requirement for you to actually make a press release. You can reach out to your customers individually and actually let them know that you had a breach and you are taking mitigative actions. And if it's cardholder data which has been breached, then you need to let them know that they need to call their bank and verify and get their cards replaced as a best security measure to avoid a fraudulent transaction on their card. So the communication bit is very important, and you need to communicate right through till the end, meaning till you have actually had the investigation report completed, your re-audit completed, and you have actually reassessed yourself, remediated, and actually maintained compliance. Ensure that you continuously communicate till the end of the journey. Because if you stop communication, what's essentially going to happen is the media will pick this up, they'll pick up a story, and they'll run with it, which is going to directly impact your reputation. And we have seen that in many recent data breach cases where the organization hasn't taken corrective steps or even bothered to mention or reply to different queries from the media or from the public, for that matter, and taken things for granted. And then the media will come out with their own stories, and then speculation starts, and then you leave the reputation of your organization to the media and the public to decide, which is very, very risky. So with this, my part of the presentation is now complete, and we move into the last and final section of this presentation, which will be handled by Andrew McHenry, my colleague here. So Andrew will run you through the summary from his point of view and to refresh where we are with this whole challenge with data breaches, compliance, data security, and then he will also give you the opportunity to register for a next step in terms of conducting a health check. So I'll hand over to Andrew at this stage. Thank you for your patience, and I'm still available if you need to ask any questions or have any comments.
Thanks, AJ. Andrew McHenry here, General Manager for Stickman Consulting. I just want to thank everyone for your participation so far in our webinar. And as part of the decision to look at your business and help mitigate your risk of a breach, AJ touched on a number of things. There's opportunistic, where people can actually, the negligence side of the business. He also touched on the fact there's many areas of your business that can be breached from both from internal, external, through negligence, and there's a huge cost to that too, because of the fact that a number of cards, 5,000 cards can end up costing quite a lot of money in recovery costs, and of course also from the impact of all these things. Really, at the end of the day, it's about your business and about your reputation, revenues and such. And questions are going to be raised about well, okay, all these things are good to know, but how do I mitigate this risks? How do I start looking at my business overall and actually putting a plan in place? And a PCI program is a good way to start. But the first thing off is we want to move into what we can do to help you through a service we provide. And that's a free PCI security health check session. So the free session that we set up is really a great way for you and your heads of business, if you're not in a position to take immediate action, but maybe there's heads of your business that want to come up to spec and speed on PCI. And what is this compliance? How it affects your business? What value it provides to your business? Also, how it helps mitigate any further risks of a breach. And what also we can discuss during that particular session, what are the potential impacts. So what it really does too, it helps bring everyone at the table up to speed on what is PCI, because a lot of people within your corporations or businesses may have different feelings or understandings of PCI. So it gets everyone on the same level playing field, so to speak. So the health tech session we run runs for around 90 minutes, and it is a really very good investment in your time, and it provides a great opportunity to ask a qualified QSA, across the table, so to speak, in a closed session. You know, those questions that either from yourself or from parts of your team around what is PCI, and then a discussion about your business. So the QSA will also ask you questions back about your business, how it operates, where card data might flow through your business, and out of that, we can ascertain a little bit of a high-level view of where your risks might be at that stage. If there's some really glowing ones, then maybe that will stand out and you can take some action upon that immediately. But the other thing is too, some of the great benefits of going through this session is that it does help bring your team up to spec and speed. It also uncovers areas and other disbeliefs within your business which were not clear to everyone. There's a lot of those myths that RJ touched on before, which are swimming around in the business environment out there, which we try to clarify for everyone. It also clarifies what is the real impact of a breach within your business. We touched on some of those before, but there's maybe some other ones that you're not aware of that's directly around your type of business you run. We also briefly review your current card data ecosystem and IT environment as part of that process, provide some initial guidance, discuss any planned changes you may have on your roadmap, internally, externally, around how you may be putting in, for example, a new payment gateway, you're looking at tokenization, those sorts of things, and how do those decisions steer within the PCI compliant world so that you're not planning yourself out of compliance through future steps. So we can help you in that process. And it also gives us a very good idea of how your business overall operates and the card data flow. And we can come back with some cost estimations, some time estimations, if you decide to take up a PCI program approach, and what is the value to your business, and you can take that to management, or you can take that and present that back to your team, so they can make a decision around do they want to go ahead with any further part of the program. So, if you'd like to discuss the PCI Health Check any further, you can definitely contact us. We won't go last screen, but there's lots of details. You can go to our website. On the last slide, you'll see my name and RJ's. You can simply call us or send us an email. But many thanks again for your time. If there's any people immediately now who would like to take up the session on the free PCI Security Health Check, we're just going to run a poll. So if you'd like to take that up, just say yes or the no. But if you'd like to say yes now or later, you can then take it up and we can contact you immediately and set up a time. So we do this over the phone. If you're locally in the Sydney CBD, we can come and visit you in your office or if you're nearby. Otherwise, just a 90-minute session over the phone. And that poll's up there at the moment if you'd like to select to get engaged in that and get us to partake in such a session. And we'll just leave that up there for a couple of seconds for everyone to select.
Yeah, while we're waiting for everyone to get a chance to quickly select the poll, the other thing I would like to share is after the session, within about 4 to 5 hours, you will get an email with a survey. So would really appreciate if you can respond to the survey. It will help us improve our webinars and the content on an ongoing basis. We spend a lot of time, building the content. So if there's anything you would like to share and help us understand, that would be really, really appreciated. I noticed there are a few more people who haven't actually probably seen the poll, so we'll keep it on for a few more, maybe 30 more seconds. So feel free to click the poll. Okay, close it. All right, Andrew, you want to?
No, that's all. Thank you very much, everyone, for participating, and I'll hand it back to RJ to close out. Thank you.
All right. So fantastic. Thank you so much for another wonderful webinar. We run regular webinars. If you go to stickman.com.au/webinars, you will see all our latest list of webinars, and we are running one on the 22nd of August and 29th of August, and then every first Wednesday of every month, there is a webinar on PCI and related topics. So feel free to keep in touch and register for our future webinars, and also share with your colleagues and other business associates who you may think will get value out of these webinars and seminars. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. We'll be closing the session now. Thank you.